Hello and welcome to our latest episode where we're diving into the dynamic world of LinkedIn and digital branding for women over 40. I'm thrilled to have Karen Yankovich with us today, a renowned LinkedIn strategist and a champion for women's empowerment in the digital space. In today's conversation, we'll uncover why women over 40 need distinct strategies on LinkedIn and how they can harness this platform to amplify their professional presence. Whether you're looking to revamp your digital identity or seeking tips to enhance your online influence, this episode is packed with insights tailored just for you. Let's get started and learn from the expertise of the LinkedIn queen herself, Karen Yankovich. Welcome to the show.
Jonny, thank you so much for having me here. My favorite topic.
It's an absolute pleasure. One of the things that I wanted to sort of dive into really quickly is why are we focusing on women and over the age of 40? Because surely this is the same strategies, the same techniques for anyone trying to build a brand, trying to break through brand awareness. Why are we focusing on women over 40?
Well, it's true that it is. The strategies are very similar, and I don't particularly care what your body parts are or how you identify when we bring you into my programs or my podcast. But I think that as women, as you know, every decade that goes by, sometimes we find ourselves reinventing ourselves, right? And we bring all this expertise to this next chapter. And maybe also a little imposter syndrome because we've never been this person before. So for me, I think women need to feel more included. I'm not really excluding men or even younger women. I really want more women to feel more included using the strategies that I teach, LinkedIn and PR, the solid relationship building strategies. Who are the people you need to have on your calendar, not how many eyes you're getting on a post, right? Who's on your calendar? I think women need to feel more included in this and more confident around this. And as much as I love to talk to people about, especially women, about the strategies around all of this, there's a huge mindset component to this too. We really need to elevate our vibe to kind of show up in the way that we want to show up in the world. So that's why I put my focus there. I think that's, I just think personally that when more women have more money, things change in the world. So that's my goal.
I like that. I like that a lot. So you have your own podcast as well. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So my podcast is called Good Girls Get Rich. And the name of the podcast really, the story behind the name really is, so many women feel that because I'm really good at this, I can't charge for it. Everybody can do this, which is not true. I want you to clearly identify what you're good at, be really, do what you love doing and then build your business from there. And that's where the abundance comes in. When we are solid in knowing what our comfort zone is and where our zone of genius is, and then expand from there, we can do that. And sometimes we think it has to be hard. It doesn't have to be hard. We can be doing what we love to do. And that's where we bring more abundance into the world, into our world.
So in terms of LinkedIn as a platform, what do you think the misconception, you obviously spend a lot of time with women over the age of 40. What's typically the misconception about LinkedIn?
That it is corporate, it's too left-brained, that it's not for me, and or even more prevalent now is it's all full of spam, right? It's just full of spam. It's just all people do on LinkedIn is spam. And the reality is, all of that can be true, and there can be other things that are true, which is, it is more corporate, but here's the deal. That's what everybody there is a buyer. There's the average income level is higher on LinkedIn. You don't have to worry about talking a business like you do on your Facebook page or on other platforms. It's all business, right? It's okay to talk about your business and what you do. Is it full of spam? Sure. But it's also, I refer to LinkedIn as my money tree. And if I the spam is the weeds, right? Just pull them out, discard them, and water your money tree. Do some outreach, just build relationships. Don't abandon your money tree because there's a couple of weeds.
Well, I mean, interestingly, I get 30% of my business from LinkedIn. So I fully get what you're saying. For someone that perhaps doesn't feel comfortable with LinkedIn, but sort of knows that they should be doing something, where should they be starting then? And what's the things that they should be considering?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to remind you that on LinkedIn, we want to be thinking about our biggest ticket opportunities. I went to a networking meeting, a women's in business networking meeting a couple months ago, and it was people. I knew some of the people in the meeting. I had previously lived in this area and just recently moved back, so I'm like, I'm going to go to this meeting. I'll know some people. And when they went around the room and asked everybody, how can we support you? One after another, they said, well, I am a coach and I want a coaching client, or I sell pens. So who do you know that needs a pen? Every single woman said the same thing. And what I want to hear them saying is, I sell pens. Who do you know that has a chain of stationery stores that might need 1,000 of my pens? Right? That's what we use LinkedIn for. So remember that you're not going on LinkedIn to sell one pen at a time. You're looking for your biggest ticket opportunities. And then who are the people you need to have on your calendar to land those contracts? And that is very simply where LinkedIn shines. It's not about spamming people. It's not about trying to get people to, like just constantly buy your stuff. It's about having conversations like, here's what I do. Who do you know? Right? Collaborative conversations, meeting partners that might be able to introduce you to 10 people or 20 people, and building actual relationships. I think when the world went virtual a few years ago, it got so noisy and we were all like scrambling. How do you out noise the noise, right? How do you get your stuff in front of eyes? And what I think happened was people just started shutting it down. Nobody's seeing it anymore. Where business is happening now is in this relationship space, at least from what I can see. Or I should say, it is still happening there, right? It's still, people buy from other people. And if you think about who you need to talk to sell your highest ticket opportunities, and then have a strategy on LinkedIn to fill your calendar full of those people, you are going to have a profitable business.
Well, you've mentioned fill your calendar a few times. You're talking about using LinkedIn to ultimately book perhaps virtual coffees or face-to-face coffees, or that's the
Exactly.
sort of thing you're talking, yeah?
That's
Yeah,
exactly right.
yeah.
And it's not necessarily like, I like there to be, when I am working with people on relationship building on LinkedIn, to build it in a more robust way, there's 3 categories of relationships that I want to see you building. One, of course, might be who's interested in your stuff, right? Of course, we want to build relationships with people that might be potential clients for us. But that's not really where I focus. I like the other 2 categories. That's where the wealth building comes from, the other 2 categories. The middle category being, who else serves that audience, right? Who else serves that audience, and having those collaboration conversations. Maybe they'll send out an email for you, or they'll put you on a LinkedIn Live and introduce you to their audience. You get to borrow their credibility a little bit, and it doesn't have to be in massive numbers, right? It doesn't. You're not really looking for like Tony Robbins to feature you. Even sometimes the smaller ones, if they can fill a room full of 8 people, but they have credibility with those 8 people, you might walk away with 2 clients, right? So thinking about that, who else has an audience of people that are similar to the audience that you want to reach. And then the third category, and this is the category that everybody overlooks, and that are journalists. Who are the journalists and the podcast hosts and the bloggers that write about the things that you're expert in? And are you building relationships with them? The credibility that you get when you're, things like this conversation right here. There might be somebody watching today that know you, Jonny, but don't know me. And they're like, well, if Jonny thinks she's worthy of my time, let me check her out. If I met that same person, at a grocery store, they wouldn't have any reason to check me out any further, right? So when you fill your network full of the kinds of people that can help you build credibility, things change fast. And that imposter syndrome we talked a little bit about, that this helps with that too, because now you're getting seen as an expert. You're building your thought leader platform legitimately, not just by cranking out tons and tons of content and exhausting yourself with posts. You're legitimately building your thought leader platform. And it's just it sounds like a lot, but if you just narrow it down and say, what if I have 3 or 5 calls on my calendar each week with a few people in each of those categories, your business is going to skyrocket. It can be done in a simple way. It doesn't have to be complicated.
So I want to get into how you're going to actually get 3 or 5 calendar
Mhm.
appointments a week. I also want to talk about imposter syndrome a tiny bit more. I should just remind people that are watching or listening, thank you for being here, by the way. This is the Jonny Ross Fractional CMO podcast. We are live right now, but you might be listening on the podcast, so thank you very much indeed. If you've got any comments you want to ask Karen anything, please do. We can either answer live or we can answer afterwards, but it's brilliant that you're here, so thank you. Now then, imposter syndrome, it's quite common I know even with men as well, but particularly with women over 40, 50, even 60 even. They've got a wealth of experience, but perhaps they've been taken some time out, spent it with the family, and then decided to come back into work. Tell me more about how they feel and how they should overcome imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would imagine there's very few people listening to this right now that can't relate to this. You're watching something on TV and there's an expert up there talking and you're like, that person's an idiot. Like, I know so much more than they know, right? Like, I can be doing that. Why am I not doing that, right? I know that that's happened to probably everybody that's listening right now, at least one time. They're there because they went after it, right? Nobody's knocked on their door and said, hey, come be on my TV show, right? So it's a very I incorporate mindset into every single thing I do, and I don't incorporate mindset because, and I love identity work, right? But you're stepping into a new identity. If you had a job, with one title, and then maybe you took a little bit of a break to be with your kids, or maybe you decided to leave corporate and you're going into out on your own as a consultant. You've never been that person before. How could you possibly know how to do it confidently, right? Like, so cut yourself a little bit of a break. Understand that the reason people like me build mindset and identity work into the work that they do is because we all need it. We all need it. When you go from a $100,000 a year business owner to a $250,000 a year business owner, that's a new identity. There's more work that needs to be done. And if I'm saying to you, I want you to show up as if you're peers with the most influential people in your industry, and I want you to get them on your calendar. You're going to be like, what? Why would they want to talk to me? Why wouldn't they want to talk to you? There was a conversation recently in a Facebook group that I'd been in a really long time. And it was somebody had reached out to somebody on LinkedIn, and it was somebody very prestigious that reached out and was like, this person reached out, what should I do? And everybody said, oh, it's probably just a dialer. It's probably an auto dialer. Just ignore blah, blah. I was like, hell no. I don't want you to ignore it. I want you to step into that. I want you to reach out and say, so nice to meet you. I'm a fan of your work. It's so great to be connected here. I'd love to know more. Like, dive in, use that as they started the conversation, right? But our immediate reaction is well, they must not have really meant that, right? And I want you to be like, well, what if they did, right? And that's where the success starts to happen. When you start to say, what's the worst thing that can happen? Maybe they never respond to you, right? Maybe they ignore you. Maybe it was an auto thing and they never respond to you. So what? Right? But maybe the next person will, and maybe it's the universe kind of opening up these doors for you. So imposter syndrome is just systemic. We can either just shrink into the corner, or we can say, all right, let me give it a shot. Right. So I think we need to do it together. And everything that I do has a community component, or a really heavy support component, because I think that, sometimes you need somebody behind you going, give it a shot. Right. Why not? That's who I want you to surround yourself with. And that's what and that's a choice that you get to make. Right. So it's okay to have imposter syndrome. I believe everybody probably has some level of imposter syndrome. If you don't, that's somebody that I would stay away from more than somebody that is a little afraid to, it takes a little courage to take that next step.
So you talked about 3 types of audiences on LinkedIn. You've got the people that you sort of directly want to sell to. You've got the people that are already selling to those people, and you've got the whole PR opportunity of building that credibility through, as you said, LinkedIn Lives, or podcasts, or blogs, or articles, or the media, all sorts of different things. What's the sort of steps that someone should be taking in terms of how to use LinkedIn? What are the strategies that they should be using? Yeah, right at the beginning. What are the things they should be doing?
So first of all, there's almost never a reason for it to be cold outreach. Never a reason to be cold outreach. I'm thinking, as you were talking about that, I'm thinking of a client that I have that's a real estate agent on the West Coast of the United States. And has a great link, because by the way, this works best when you take the time to do a great LinkedIn profile. You need to look worthy of these people's time, right? And that's on you. So you have to have and nobody really cares that you're the CEO. They want to know what's in it for them. So you want to have a profile that kind of really positions you as that thought leader, right? So this client of mine in real estate saw an article that was written on NBCnews.com about real estate. So instead of just sharing the article and talking about the article, they shared the article, talked about the article, and tagged the journalist and connected with the journalist, right? And said, hey, Mary, just saw your article. Love what you talk about this. Not enough people are talking about that. I'd love to be connected to you here on LinkedIn. And you're going to see I tagged you all over the place on this article, right? So provided value. So was this a cold outreach? Absolutely. Mary had no idea who my client was, but my client provided value, right, to her by saying, hey, I'm going to share this article. What journalist, you have a podcast. Do you wake up every morning with people sharing it and tagging you all over the place? Like, I wish that happened, right? We remember when that
If
happens.
only, Karen, if only that
right,
happened.
we remember when that happens. So of course the journalist thanked them, and a week later reached out and said, hey, I'm writing another article. Can I ask you a few questions? Because remember, they looked great. They had a great profile. Turned into a full page article on NBCnews.com, just featuring my client, right? So now, okay, it's seen by 65 million people. So that it happened that quickly in 1 week in this cold, with a cold kind of opportunity. And, I don't know that necessarily brings in a lot of business directly, but here's what happens. Now my realtor client can use as seen on NBC. No other real estate agent in their community can do that. When they go after a listing appointment, that listing appointment, when they're asking questions and they say, well, they drop the article on the table and say, well, when I was NBC News' housing price specialist, right? That you don't lose business that way, right? So it can happen as simple as that. And all I would do was providing value. So, again, I have a podcast. I get a ton of podcast pitches. I don't necessarily, I look at them, but I very rarely use them because to me, I don't really know these people. But if somebody takes the time to listen to my show, share it on social media, tag me in it and say, love this episode, and by the way, you guys, if you want to be on Jonny's show or my show, do that right now to this show, right? Share it with your audience. We will remember that. And then, we'll check you out. And if at some point down the road, you want to be a guest, you're going to have a much better shot of that happening because you took the time to provide value before you just started pitching yourself. So you can take that example across all journalists, the whole PR spectrum. That middle category, there's just no end of opportunities. Like, we all belong to, or many of us belong to organizations, right? It could be as simple as a Facebook group that you're in, right? If the Facebook group is full of your ideal clients, who runs that Facebook group? Maybe go to them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm a member of your group. I love that group. I'd love to be connected to you here, right? You're not pitching them yet. You're just saying, I think there might be opportunities to collaborate. Go to the, join an organization. Join, like here in the United States, we've got National Association of Women Business Owners. And then there's state, and sometimes there's even more than one subgroup within the states. Join those organizations. Open up the directory. Don't reach out to everyone in the directory, but cherry pick, right? Hey, I just joined this association. I see that you are a member in the association. I think our audience seem like they might be similar. I'd love to connect and hear, how are you leveraging this? How are you leveraging this organization? How can we, how can I best use this? Reach out to the people that run the organization and say, hey, I just became a member. How can I best leverage this, right? Maybe they'll get you some visibility, right? So you can also kind of meld the first two categories, the who might be a client and who might be a partner, by kind of mining those directories and reaching out to people that you think might be a good client, but the outreach is, hey, I'm a new member of this blah, blah, blah Chamber of Commerce. I came across you. It looks like you've been a member for a while there. I really like what you're doing. I'd love to connect with you here. And then just start by connecting. And, Jonny, sometimes somebody might say, well, what do you want? Right. And that's okay. Let them go. They're not your people. You're going to find opportunities to start conversations. So take that example, like you go to conferences. Are you connecting with all the speakers? Are you telling them that you want to watch, you're looking forward to going to the conference? Are you writing them a recommendation after the conference, right? Like this is what I mean by like, be really intentional about who these people are. I have one client that I'm working with right now, she, I'm not going to name names because it's imminent, it's coming out imminently, but she wants to work with, let's just say HR directors. That's not exactly who she works with, but HR directors. And, like, we're like, how do we get to them? Well, what she decided to do was create a white paper. And she took, so her average sale is about $50,000. Right. So she's looking for corporate contracts in the $50,000 range. So she took a month or two to come up with a topic, reach out to like 50 different HR directors that she wants to be, she wants them to be her client. But she reached out and said, I'm looking for feedback on this topic. Can I interview you? She did some interviews. She's got some video interviews, some audio interviews, some text interviews. Her white paper is about to be published, right? And now she's going to do more outreach and say, all right, let's talk. How can we get this in front of as many hands as possible? But ultimately, if 4 of those people, say, yeah, I want to hear more about your services, that's $200,000, right? So it's about diving deep and creating sometimes these opportunities. So it's not just about spamming. It's about thinking outside the box, getting creative, and building actual relationships with the kinds of people that you think can bring more wealth into your world.
I love the idea of speaking to speakers at a conference, giving them recommendations afterwards, tagging them during and pre and post, all of that sort of stuff. And I'm not trying to be I'm certainly not trying to be big-headed, but to me that's natural stuff that I've always done. But very few people do it. Very few people do it. And
Jonny, I speak about LinkedIn at conferences. Typically, I bring there's a Dunkin' Donut chain here in the U.S. I have $5 Dunkin' Donut gift cards. I have a stack of them, and I give them away at a conference to anybody who's connected with me on LinkedIn beforehand. I am not going to go broke giving away these gift cards. It almost never happens. It almost never happens. And you know what? And I speak on LinkedIn. You think that would be a natural, right? It almost never happens. And you're taking the time to go to these conferences. And I'm going to flip this a second, Jonny. What if you are the speaker at a conference, right? What you can then do is go into your LinkedIn network, kind of do maybe if you have Sales Navigator, you can actually do a geography, like a miles, a certain amount of miles or kilometers around your thing, and then do some outreach to people. Like if you're speaking, let's use realtors again. If you're speaking at a real estate conference, go into Sales Navigator, say, show me all my first degree network, who are realtors, who are within 25 miles of where I'm going to speak, and reach out to them all and say, are you going to be at this conference? I'd love to see you in person. We've never met in person. The conference organizers love it because if people show up at the conference and say, I'm looking for Karen, right? So they know that you brought people there, and those are your buyers. Those are your buyers when they show up, right? So there's just so many ways you can do this, but it's about thinking outside of the box and building actual relationships with people.
Yeah. And it's so easy to stand out in a lot of the examples that you've given. One of the things that you've mentioned, you've sort of glossed over a couple of times, is I can't remember the word you used, but having a really, you took it that you'd already have a good LinkedIn profile. That was sort of the basic. Yeah. And I just wanted to define what that is. I assume it's about branding it up, making it look right, making it have the right language, the right words. What are the things that in your mind make it's
interesting. A lot of people think about LinkedIn, your profile, as like an online resume. And your resume is all about who you used to be, right? Your LinkedIn profile should be positioning you for the person you're stepping into. Right? It should be your personal brand, not your resume. So there's the experience section, which is the most resume-like section, but you can also custom craft that. And I'm not saying, I don't want you to make things up, but you also don't have to talk about everything you've ever done. Just talk about the things that are relevant, that build you up to what you're doing right now. If what I did, I owned a company 25 years ago, and I did everything in that company. If what I was doing now is HR related, what you would see on that is that I would talk about negotiating for health benefits and hiring and firing, but I don't even talk about that, even though I did that work, because it's not relevant to what I'm doing now. So even down to the experience section, just kind of build the story of you up to where you are today. And then in your about section, which is the hardest section to do, but it is the section that is the most important, make that up, tell people about you, right? But use first person, make it story-ish, right? Like give them a story, make people want to read it. And remember that nobody cares about you. They care about what you can do for them, right? So I can go on and on. You absolutely want to incorporate keywords into your profile because you want to think about what are people searching for on LinkedIn, which is a little different than on a search engine that you want to come up in a search result. So you want to use pepper those words in there. And I also think if we're talking to an audience of mostly entrepreneurs, I think, or a creative or somebody that has a personal brand or a thought leader brand, I think you should be using creator mode on LinkedIn. You should have your profile in LinkedIn creator mode, which is free and which gives us the opportunity to showcase what we create. And that helps position you with that thought leader brand that we talked about.
So creator mode is more for if you're going to be sharing content as well, yeah?
Not necessarily, yes, but not necessarily. What it does is it positions you and anything you've created above your skills and stuff like that, right? But it gives you opportunities. You get the opportunity to do LinkedIn Lives. You get a LinkedIn newsletter opportunity. You get additional links that you can share to like your website or a lead magnet or something like that, right? So it gives us more tools than traditional resume like type normal LinkedIn normal.
I mean, I don't know about you, but in terms of frequently asked questions from the sort of demographic that we're talking about here, I can hear them saying, so how often should I be posting on LinkedIn and what should I be posting? I bet you get that question.
The good news is you don't have to post a lot on LinkedIn. You don't. And listen, the minute these words come out of my mouth, LinkedIn is going to change it. And maybe they changed it yesterday and I didn't know yet, right? So anybody that tells you, and this is exactly how it works, don't believe them because it's changed, it changes. But generally, there are people out there that like to do they like to count posts and count things. And I'm so grateful for them because I learn from them. And the studies that they do when they count posts and count likes and count engagement is that more than once a day actually reduces your reach for each post. And that once a day doesn't necessarily have to even be your own content, right? Like, if you are, like this is out on my LinkedIn profile right now. So this is my once a day. I don't have to do anything, right? I just showed up to talk to you. So, at most once a day. If you're doing a few times a week, that's a beautiful thing too. Again, I'm not too worried about how many people see my posts. I'm more concerned with who's on my calendar. But that being said, as you're starting to build out your network through all these people we talked about, the journalists, the podcast hosts, the people in your associations, you want to stay top of mind with them. So you do want to have consistent content going out, tagging people where you can. And if you're doing these things that we're talking about here, the content piece is going to come naturally. You don't have to create something fake.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So this is very much about mindset. It's about confidence. It's about actually, spinning it on its head and thinking, well, actually, maybe they are interested in hearing from me.
Right.
I do know what I'm talking about. And you've said it a couple of times, thinking outside the box. So using opportunities, not just sharing an article, but tagging the journalist. I mean,
And
what a
then
great
connecting
idea.
with the journalist and telling them how much you loved their article and how much you loved what they wrote. Who doesn't want that? It used to be, years ago with the news, they would say things like, if it bleeds, it leads, right? Now they talk about if it's shareable, it's airable. So they especially journalists like NBC and things like that, I was at a local TV station here in New Jersey a couple of years ago, maybe. And they have like a leaderboard on the wall of social media posts and likes and engagement and shares and contents. They actually get, like, they track that stuff. They're tracking that stuff. So they're very happy when we're sharing their stuff, and it fits right in. I also went to I saw a panel recently, and we talked to one of the questions and it was all New York, and I live right outside New York City. So this was New York City journalists here. This was not like, in the middle of nowhere. This is some of the, biggest journalists in the world. And they were asked what's the best way to reach you if we have a story? And every one of them said social media. Every one of them said social media, DM us on Twitter, DM us on Facebook or LinkedIn. So that's where they're getting this information. Their inboxes are crazy, and they're dynamic. They want us to reach out to them. They need us to reach out to them.
Karen, you have definitely made people think. And I think it is reflecting on that mindset. As you've said, you've got your own podcast, which you talked about, the Good Girls Get Rich podcast. So if you are interested in listening to that podcast, please do Google it. You'll find it on your favorite podcasting platforms. You've got a group program with quite a bit of a done for you element, and you do one-to-one work as well.
Yeah.
Where should people find you? Where do you, obviously you hang out on LinkedIn?
I do. Well, I'm at Karen Yankovich across all social media. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And one of the questions you asked is like, what do I do if I don't know what to do? Well, I've answered that question. We created an assessment. You can get the assessment at karenyankovich.com/quiz. Or I think if you go to linkedinquiz.com, it'll take you there too. And it basically just will ask a couple questions. And then based on your answers, whether you're more of like a white paper person or more of a relatable person, like kind of some things to get started, but also some things to look out for. So you can check that out. That's completely free. And it gets you into our world. And if you want to learn more, there's all kinds of ways to learn more once you start getting, you get an email or two about your results on that. But because I think mindset is so important, I've actually added a lot of fun things to that quiz. So it's not just and here's your answer. I've even created, this was a lot of fun, morning visualizations, depending on your type, to kind of just step into the day in a more confident, powerful way, depending on which type. So there's 4 different ones for the 4 different results. So we had a lot of fun things to that, because I really want more women to understand that this is where the money is. And if you're not sure where to start, I got you. Start with the quiz or reach out to me. There's all over my LinkedIn profile. There's ways to book a call on the calendar. Ask for help. I am here to help.
We will put a link to that in the show notes, but it is, as you said, karenyankovich.com/quiz. We'll put it in the show notes. Karen, thank you so much.
This was fun. Thanks for having me.
It's been fun. It's been enlightening. You're clearly very passionate about it, but which I love. I'm passionate about this sort of stuff as well. But it's really given people something to think about. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the show, let us know. Reach out, tag us, and please do tell your friends and share. This has been Jonny Ross, Fractional CMO, with Karen Yankovich, the LinkedIn Queen, I'm going to call you.
Well, I'll accept that.
We'll see you all soon. Take care. Thanks, Karen. Bye-bye.